Hello, America. You have serious topics in the news, and there's a child abuse method where a breaching method measured and maintained. Uses of all words like serious, measured and maintained, where the styles of logic can't defend themselves. The syntax and a forward demonstrations of by the what is actually simultaneously recorded. Natures of truths used for lies into screen lies that are not just about lies. See, we say, oh, it's a lie or not? And oh, the branches have the right to lie. The January 6th Commission is recorded to an extent conscious of collusions with FBI directors, retired and standing, where and how they don't want to be that. No one wanted to be roles with collusions, with that identity of sophistication that was with slavery entrenched North and South America before our founders were born, where they were measuring and maintaining what everyone said. Because if they didn't speak things that would hurt others here for themselves and make or say silent that would hurt others simultaneously, all positive negative treatments. Wherever there's a positive or negative treatment, there's an identity treatment. Now, even if it has nothing to do with us, increasingly, uh, the meaning of race and physical differences is not by accident, has been separated from, abridged from the course of Black pupils, white survives. The identity of relativity, just that and how we are individuals grouped and together, species body of volume slash S, is demonstration of the identity of relativity existing. Further examination of it reveals that the identity of it is an identity of as relativity slash hyperrelativity to ourselves. The same way, the individual cell of a body, it is only positive when it is positive to and on to its identity of sequence slash simultaneous nature. Cell nucleus, cell body, cell wall, slash S, note with the body of value coming through this. The identity of relativity, its identity of relationship to itself and the value of that. Also, science knows to an extent, consciously, increasingly, this is relative. They blamed on other things, others, or ourselves. Where and how really American history became abridged. It stayed abridged, stayed collusions with entrenched roles with, if you entertain roles with it, or if if you ignore it, even though you have nothing, no, in other words, everyone was enslaved by a method, sickly, distinctly, with black and white, to measure and maintain who's gonna defend the course of Black people's white survives, and where and how that real differences were assigned to be other illusions, made real, but used syntactically also by the counters to it, blaming other things, others, ourselves, leaving out with the logic the other roles with it, with the breaching method. So also when people online use words like they, and then when you start speaking, in other words, they attach victims to fake conversations about things that happen to them at all ages and their family and with everyone around them. And they get away with this per where and how time treatments are at police departments. So we're going to learn about how the police departments have roles with things like murders, relevant to where and how they have roles with fact treatment nature-oriented predicate acts. I am not a lawyer. I'm not a police foreman. I'm not a judge. I am not a doctor, but recorded as is actually recorded since founding, are criminally foreign influenced identities of logic and natures and roles with juxtaposed, totally distinct natures of organized crime that also have and have had non-distinct use/s of them. There was a Rocky Hill police officer that the police forms know my name. I don't know his name. He pulled me over at the corner of Hangdog Lane and Route 3 at the corner of where Rocky Hill of where Route 3 runs into Ye Old Town and vice versa, where Ye Old Town runs into Rocky Hill. That's where the sign says, "Welcome to Ye Old Town." This is where George Washington had to come, leave slavery entrenched north and south, because you could only semi-count extort to an extent. American history cannot be understood if one does not understand how they had to counter extort their other founders and to pretend they came together for reasons hyper additional to fake than they really came together and who they were. So that's why they had to hide that, because there's a breaching method still measuring who's going to entertain. What can't be entertained individually, grouped and together, and simultaneously afford the short words, let alone the protraction of the short words, where and how they can be led by its identity of relationship to itself and only increasing value of that. The extent of the hyper invisible but still discernible that we can discern. And this also has simultaneously our needs to address also a hyper invisible, hyper archetypal criminal enterprise rolls with it, self-valued as countries A through Z, individually grouped and together now, having been self-valued, having been tactically ulterior systems and voicings of the human species body of volume science, of its individuals' volume science, and of the reason really why and how we are grouped, ages, areas, sexes, contemplation of this before the sciences became criminally foreign influenced, more probably in all kinds of ways demonstrably, using what is hyper evidential. It is more probable that the sciences had been revealed to teach this way. The sounds of the languages have a better than living identity of the relationship to themselves. The same way, the reason and how the reason is increasingly a value why or how we have black pupils, whites have eyes, and exception nature here, where life has distinct identities of truth. There's one identity of truth that is true always, not denying the slight exceptions, and not valuing the slight exceptions denied. History is a contemplation that cannot be separated from the phrase criminal insidiousness. And we have to understand criminal insidiousness natures of positive treatments, negative treatments, simultaneously wrought to collusion /S, where people from other locations increasingly need at all other locations to hide the same finite, active, and progressive lies with others, take the collusions with people that also how they apply the sense, use Jane Austen's phrase, the sense and sensibilities of people, individually grouped and together. Incapable of defending their sense and sensibilities and their logic, and of simultaneously affording speech proper outside of interbranch locations as roles with originally instilled where functional. All time treatments are measured and maintained, used criminally for and influenced at interbranch locations, individually grouped and together. All exception nature tied to them is also relevant, where and how differential criminal for and influence everyone. So one of the things no one wanted roles with slavery, but that was forced. It was forced on everyone, and it was their own slavery. It was that breaching method who was trying to figure out what and who was behind putting Marbury versus Madison to mean that real justice must satisfy all appearances of real justice, and to say that this is simultaneously where and how the Constitution should be unabridged. And they shouldn't, and no laws should be made to abridge speech. See, we have sequence shifts, implanting evidences at locations, implanting fake motives too, pretending for civil cases. The courts and the police forms have roles with civil cases in our countries and in other countries relative to where and to how they demonstrated together. They share off-campuses locations with students and with adults, with housing and with programs with the campuses, but also at intercities locations. And this being relevant where and how also their identities, as just like identities black and white, as identities as the voice / voicing of the campuses, as the breaching method knew that the Republic tactically, criminally re-engineered, would have nature demonstrating this. Because nature revealed it before the sciences became self-valued as what could no longer afford the short words, let alone the protraction, by that which understood and values temporary difference for the discernment of the identity, that just like the parts of our body are our semi-nature relationship to our complete identity, of the identity that our complete identity is relative to. It is hyper invisible, but still discernible. It is conjunction to these three invisible, but still discernible. The distinct volume sciences, and they are conjunction to all parts of the elements of grammar and of the nature of languages and of the physics of languages, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously this way, the identity. So we know that identity's volume science is forbid finite truth and the value of sequence truth, where and how we have an extent, really, that we could agree about what is true always, not denying the slightest exception, not valuing the slightest exception to deny. See, logic that moves to claim things are racism is naive logic that cannot afford the finite, what really came true first. So already those all locations are having been used. So there are women with New Britain Superior Court and with Hartford courts that have been involved with the FBI and with other branches of government, also individually grouped together, involved with predicate acts and sequence shifts, and planting narratives by the locations relative to what came before the guy pulled me over at that corner, which is also right around the corner from former Mayor Gold. associated with the kids, associated with his family too. In other words, I never had a personal conversation with him in my life, and I had his daughter and other people sequence shift and pretend fake natures of ties to me, fake ties completely to me. And these are also names evolved through time with forensics locations, like a Whiting Forensics and various natures of kids courts and adult courts and other and probate courts. They've been stacking and on and off the state judicial branch offices. This is relevant to where and to how the countries demonstrate, confess, record, confirm. They're going to pretend other, but where people communicate other than they say, including the branch of government. They switch names tied to this because it's an identity theft / fraud / slander method that has and has had police, as they're described, going to be described at 6 o'clock on the news. Fox News, MSNBC, and CNN. Their social media are also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with the intelligence community with criminally foreign influenced readings of statutes and of exceptions and of exception nature, which is exponentially relevant where value treatments are by what is hyper invisible, but still discernible, the identity of hyper relativity. Now, this instantly brings up the value of the phrase theory of relativity and predicate acts methods, where our government individually with other governments coupled before understanding how we are coupled, like with countries next to us, for example. Other ways, we have to understand how we are manifest where it is true always, not denying a sequence. Those coupled reasons are being generated where and how. The extent of the one identity of volume that will only stay. That which all other identities of value progression are a semi-nature relationship to, individually grouped and together. It's every identity of volume has a distinct identity of relativity to itself in demonstration of this. And it being an identity of hyper-simultaneous. To begin with, as science, for how to discern it, that hyper-invisible distinct identity of relation, our volume, a distinct identity of relationship to itself. That is one of the elements of grammar that has been left out. We don't have to agree about the name of it, but it is an identity of conjunction to positive and to negative, not distinctly from ourselves, but also distinctly, because we are only an extent of itself. Just like how our complete identity is distinctly, non-distinctly onto itself, as itself, while it is distinctly and non-distinctly onto itself as the parts of our other sequence / simultaneous nature parts of our body. See, this is Trinity per science. And this is relevant as a science about where and how we are hyper additional nature. We cannot help but be hyper additional nature. Where and how this one identity of volume is only increasing. All exception nature and demonstration of the same thing. Life and death are two identities of hyper-simultaneous nature. Words like extremism and radical are being and having been used to measure and to maintain where and how the identity that languages and the other sciences are really about. The identity the sciences share, where they appear not to share it Also, this is relevant where more and more a special difference nature is being made. This is relevant to where and how Earth has a special difference, distinctly, non-distinctly, and hyper simultaneously relative to and as our own. Nature communicates the answers we need, but it uses and is an identity of conjunction, the positive and negative, and as identity that we have to discern the simultaneous. It has conjunction, and we're aware how we are fact cheap in nature. If our logic does not value properly the only increasing significance and value of what really came true before the order of the finite now. Not that means trying to figure that out contemplatively, not leaving out the smallest finite detail. We know that nature of contemplation and of honesty has been prevented, where and how identities and identity's relativity is only allowed to be voiced. And they attach people to fake words. One of the ways they get away with this is by pretending people are complaining about their emotions for emotional reasons because they feel bad. Meanwhile, they're seeding records online and at crime scenes increasingly as collusion with what really went down before all those things, even before killings, not just by police, not just by overt criminal enterprises, private ones, insidiousness of people's logic A through Z, like regarding the value of voting. The value of value is so we can see the hyper invisible but still discernible. Value is so you can see the hyper invisible but so discernible, your own identity. Every identity comes with that which is true always, not denying the slightest sequence, not valuing the slightest sequence having been denied. We know simultaneously, hyper evidentially reported that they left out the course of black pupils, whites of eyes, abridged. They left out how criminal insidiousness, natures of positive treatments and negative treatments could be and were in collusion at all locations. So there are people that filmed the fake nature and fake ties to me completely in a park when I was a kid, a couple times, relative to this. They do this to everybody at all different locations, and then they get more people need to hide stuff, and then valuing when they have illusions, showing them to them to pretend that's why, and how they ignore it and attach lies to truth and lies to lies, and to get over complete lies, where lies are criminally foreign influence, and the people charged with hurting people who lie have collusions using that and the fake differences to keep everyone's mouth shut, where and how short words are effectively being and having been applied by a breaching method to sense and discern through the sense and sensibilities, again, to use Jane Austen's phrase, of each person, of each group, and of the species humanity's words. To sense and discern and to hurt, attach the fake words, change the words, value that having been done against anyone who's going to show how that's a theater as criminal insidiousness. That how there are solutions. Nature's right there showing them, and they all come with the needs to understand the hyper invisible, but still discernible. Self-value uses of names like America, like our locations, areas, and states. Every modern country's name. Being and having self-valued, being and having been applied by hyperarchetypal breaching method. I'm not a lawyer. Hyperarchetypal predicate acts delivery system method. Hyperarchetypal criminal insidiousness delivery system method. Criminal insidious nature of positive treatments, negative treatments, identity treatments simultaneous. Wherever there is a positive treatment or a negative treatment, there is the relativity / hyperrelativity. It is inseparable from all things, the smallest finite thing. Grouped things, and all these things together. Where and how? 5 distinct identities of sequence / simultaneous nature that are also 3 ways bound. And also to an extent that we can discern itself equally gaining its value within its greater identity, the one that is the possession. Just like the 5 identities of sequence nature, invisible but still discernible, that are one identity of relationship to itself as the cell nucleus, cell body, cell wall. 3 distinct identities of relationship to themselves. They come also with the identity of relativity to the gases and the identity of relativity to the water and earth's elements. And so there are people in the Britain Superior Court and Hartford courts before the World Trade Center attack, and then in that context and since from Connecticut, interbranch locations and private tied to them. These are also people involved with campuses at Sandy Hook and private tied to that. And the social media police forums that are also doctors, how they've been getting away with exploiting anomaly. They've been putting more and more fake things into databases, including with courts kept meeting with themselves and with their patients and criminals and their family members, needing to hide what they did with fact treatment nature-oriented predicate act sequence shift planting, wherein how investigators and all perception. To understand uses of it, you have to understand uses of all locations commonly. The same way by the breaching method, so many ways, grouped and together effectively, can be revealed this way, can be discerned. Many pray. So when they make value treatments and use passions and emotions by things like computers, simultaneously economic treatments, the political parties and their defenses of their identities, it is measured and maintained by a breaching method distinctly by how and from through our own. To screen how it does that, keep that worse than not understood, has complete possession over the sophistication of modern countries A through Z, individually grouped and together. All economic treatments, all they have overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and seriousness. People A through Z reported have facilitated needs to self-value each other, even when hurting each other, to hide what they actually know is recorded true. This is why and how the people, got away with pretending that Americans and humanity don't realize is a trap. New York City. All exception nature are applied effectively. Uses of that to blame other things, others, ourselves, what maintains that trap, and uses of it. You would not believe the amount of money that has been stolen through Social Security with the identities of police forms involved, relative to their motivations having been cultivated through their roles with other campuses in other countries, and extortion methods that have those on and off campuses relationships immediately off campus and longer away. and have interstates. Originally still used criminally foreign influence / hypercriminally foreign influence. Uses of it individually grouped and together rolls with colonization that stayed rolls with the entrenched breaching method, and in the breaching method's possession over the human fact treatment nature and uses of it relative to where and to how those three signs, those values are only increasing. It's the extent of the identity of hyper invisible we could discern. Its identity of relationship to itself only increasing perfectly, and the value of that only increasing perfectly. This is how we can discern also that which is distinctly, non-distinctly, and hyper simultaneously the identity of conjunction to truths and lies. That is, again, these treatments of truths and lies by voices using passions and emotions are already having been forced, tricked, or persuaded, and worse, to use passions and emotions. You do that dishonestly and to value illusions to get away with it. Value where and how they have methods to get away with it, like pretending they don't realize and couldn't fathom things because of the time, because of time treatments with phones. Then they change what people say. The networks reported, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. As roles too, they juxtapose with this. They fabricate complete audio and video fake transcripts to hide what the nations see. This they confess, demonstrate, record together. Conscious uses of this as roles that are going to hide where they self-value abuses of their own families forced the roles and of ourselves and of our family members. Everyone at all locations. They're attaching everyone and everyone next to them to fake words relevant to where and to how all investigators, all their database conjunctions since before computers, they're involved with a method that exploits them there more and more because it exploits them effectively at other locations through other apparent and real, but even where real motivations, nature's needs, interests, increasingly juxtaposed with the needs to hide collusions with where and how. Effectively, the worst method by and furtherance of method to further overt criminal enterprises and uses of collusions with criminal insidiousness natures of positive and negative treatments and identity treatments with such serious subjects, effectively preventing anyone from yelling, getting angry properly, effectively preventing anyone from not being, not entertaining psychopath, sociopath natures of calmness, natures of what they call peace. So all of a sudden, they start telling police officers to look at themselves as justices of the peace because they have criminal insidious natures of peace, having been self-valued by the both differentially employed. The criminal insidiousness natures of everyone regarding their takes on the law. Everyone, including the lawyers, and they're reported hyper evidentially. A whole bunch of ways, things we know. See, one of the prime methods where time is used simultaneously too fast, too slow at interbranch locations to hide what they were involved with before that is saying, acting, pretending things at locations after they already prevented things from being spoken. And they use time simultaneously too fast, too slow to get over on what's actually, to get over on how nature uses exception nature. Hyper additionally, two ways that no one could invent. Anything we could invent, make up, or be cannot be its complete identity of volume, its complete identity of relationship to itself, and the value of that. which could only make one. It could only make more of its identity of volume, its identity of volume's identity of relationship to itself, and the only increasing value of that, as it's a special difference to itself, also positive to itself, one way. So the longer we stay in these systems, tactical ulterior from that which is hypernative, pure, before the sciences became criminally foreign influence in semi-ancient times, regardless of the physical system, because that too would have been manifest, grouped, and together, designed to liberate left to right. Only individuals could defend, of course, in the order of the finite. So, increasingly, where and how left out is the value and significance of how criminally foreign influence database relationships were known but ignored by the logic of people. See, these are the identities of logic that cannot defend themselves and afford communicated with our founders left to communicate with ourselves for themselves as ourselves about how slavery was entrenched and how they wanted nothing to do with it. They wanted that understood how it was sickly distinctly against every single person, including themselves, and that had been sustained. And there was and where and how nature had been demonstrating it, those natural demonstrations were increasingly juxtaposed with other artificially created, syntactical. In other words, they're making the real cause. They were doing bad things to people, and they're pretending now. Now they're pretending it's in America's name. They're using the truth for a lie, pretending they don't realize that they have all roles, even though forced, all roles with the entrenched breaching method. For example, with uses of our founders pretended to have roles with slavery, leaving out how our founders had to counter extort the other founders, and they were still being measured and maintained. Roles with and as slaves, and sickly distinctly from being hurt sickly distinctly, because if those roles weren't sensed being accorded with, bad things were done. Boxing is fun one way. The species body longs to shadow box, some rest, some pace, here many pray. So please, Fox News, MSNBC, and CNN. There are training of people that run the prisons, police forms, private, retired and standing into branch, families. There are ones that involved with overt criminal enterprises from private ones, and where they make time treatments. It's used simultaneously, too fast, too slow, sequence shifting names, switching names. These are people leading up to the World Trade Center. Before that guy pulled me over at the corner of the building, there were women with New Britain Superior Court and with Hartford courts who colluded also with people's computers that are not even their own, with people with digital crimes, with further with a principal child abuser involved with this, and further with a Joshua Julian as one of the ones involved with the police chief Cintron, also with the uses of the town line locations and uses of where they have uses of the right to lie, uses of the right to hide, but they've been using the locations next to the town law, and where they've been using there's a Rich Doobie I never met, I never around school or anything like that. His name was repeated to me with the Joshua Julians by people who also reported, could demonstrate, confirm. Every once in a while they would seek me out to make confessions and demonstrations, and then they would try to cover up when I would show them that they were lying. And this is where relative, because they have roles where they were overt slash insidious and are overt slash insidious remote uses of each member of each family of people who are black and people of the other, A through Z in Wethersfield, including with the Russians. There's a Peruta family involved also with people with the name Bayer and with the lawyers also of the FBI and of Wethersfield Police and of medical locations involved with predicate acts methods, identity theft, fraud, slanders, including prison law. There's a prison in Sandy Hook, Newtown, who has crimes with courts with their patients and criminals before they got caught during their time there and since. They should fear with Next and Dance. If they, to hide and plot. I rap a lot. In other words, please tell former Fox News correspondent Judge Napolitano. It has something to do with people on off. There's a Domain family, and there's a Mendez family. That a whole bunch of people recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed them also with and Allison Mulcahy I never met. They tried to make a fake exception when non-verbally confirmed and demonstrated roles with a Thaddeus Grabowski next to Fox News right before a 2006 district court case where he was the defendant, Thaddeus Grabowski, who also made threats and demonstrations to me and confirmations to me of his roles with predicate acts with Hartford courts, judges and prosecutors, family members that work with the courts and New Britain courts. At other locations, they've been planting predicate acts, federal evidences, crimes, nature of identity theft, fraud, slanders, uses of words like crimes, criminally foreign influenced, ulterior motives than apparent, and per names and per the involvements of criminally foreign influence uses of the lower hierarchy and of the hierarchy of the FBI. Former director of the FBI, as a defendant, and his co-defendants with their deposition, and their lawyer also had roles in West Hartford locations with Hartford courts and with the other police forms, with federal evidences, crime, child abuses. The same people have roles with uses of programs with the elderly and elderly homes. And to hide that preemptively, effectively, they have been maintained collusions with people from the youngest campuses, from the youngest ages, where they're being affected from off campuses to rolled self-value increasingly on campuses, and even private tied. And overt criminal enterprise. We have differential criminal enterprise. People are doing things they don't want to do, but it's mixed also with people are doing it for them, so they can keep things going before interbranch locations to hide all kinds of natures of collusions that are not legitimate, but that they get away with appearing to be. So they have identities of uses of spots in Hartford locations that border Wethersfield locations, all along that border, with names involved with predicate acts with them, wire crimes with the Wethersfield police, falsified police reports, fake conversations with me, as people involved with connections that were made from the youngest campuses I went to from the youngest age. And then when they made exceptions, people, I came in sixth grade, I came in fourth grade. No, there were fit collusions with these. So I didn't even go to that school. They connected the people with the intelligence community as the ones involved with the foreign. So there was a whole bunch of people with a whole bunch of different countries involved with a Mr. Abruzzi, who confessed, demonstrated, reported, confirmed roles with students from other classrooms and their parents. And I don't know if I ever had any problem with anyone in my classroom. There was one instance, the only time I ever saw him in my classroom was Joe DeMoro, who recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. My fifth grade teacher has roles with overt criminal enterprises, also with others. People associated with the body dumping spot of Billy Grasso and the spot next to it with the Fianza families. They know my names. I don't know their names. One of them's name is Enzo, and they have spots intercities through time involved with spots next and names also next to other body dumping spots. Involved with the Dillon family, also involved with them, timed with other natures of organized crime and illusions roles with a principal child offender used to force that. They also fabricated emails with the intelligence community's roles on and off WTNH spots in New Haven. There are proofs that there's a spot of family. There's a spot of family, and there are people on and off 2 Route Highway involved with campuses and locations next to Trinity College, involved with the intelligence community and people on and off the state judicial branch offices, involved on and off 2 Route Highway where it runs into Hangdog Lane, where a whole bunch of people along that route have, I don't know at all, tied to people I only know who made fake exceptions pretending to know me. And they also, as collusions with that, use the exceptions to that too. Also relevant where and how they have roles with already all kinds of things that came before formal evidence locations used to cover up uses of their databases, of their names and of their natures at other locations, and increasingly used remotely showing needs to hide how that is discernible. So they've been increasingly preemptively, actively, and progressively. Worse than just plotting. Worse than just blaming on other things, others, or selves for it. They're not legitimately, oh, but that's how this is how we do things. This is the demonstration. It's the whole other side. Or the exception nature are effectively measured and maintained. Use tactical ulterior from that identity that is the identity that came and was really what happened before everything that unfolds now, where and how it is again identity of volume through what is temporary, cannot make more of itself but one way. If many pray, vaccines. So it is 2 distinct identities of plurality. And an examination of this shows it teaching us, wanting us to understand how we can discern it as one identity of possession as 5 distinct identities of sequence / simultaneous nature. So simultaneously 3-way bound, 5-way bound. And we examine this is because more and more Trinity nature is being made. And the way we observe this is its identity of volume, its identity of relationship to it itself, and the value of that only increasing. Begins and stays a subject inseparable from all others. So these are names before the World Trade Center attack, recorded a whole bunch of ways at locations, planting evidences with courts. Also with their patients and criminals forced to know since before they got caught in those contexts and since. And it's not legitimately trying to make people appear just to be not to be police forms. Make people be able to appear to be saying things naturally, not just for the reasons they pretend. It's why we have to get to the database side of this. And uses of the names next to campuses. There's a Pierce family. There's a Matt Pierce. I never had any bad conversation. I never had a class with him. See, people have involved their family members, and there are people tied to, I believe it might be his mother. I don't know if it's his mother. She made statements like there are people with the fire departments involved with the intelligence community and with some acting professors recorded, demonstrated, confirmed involved with police forms that switch names and forge names. Also with courts that do that, where and how they've been using also the hallways of the courts, the parking garages in the courts, where and how relevant, even their perception differentially, their identity of volume, its identity of relationship to itself, and the perception and the value of that is being having been effectively used criminally for an influence at other locations. Now, forgiveness is relevant where and how everyone jumps in and blocks short words from being used. And that's what they've been doing. And all exceptions in exception nature. There have been roles with criminally foreign influence uses of that too. Also as collusions back at other locations. See, they're keeping everyone. You know, you should see on Twitter, the FBI has more roles with some upskirt pictures and neighbors of an Ian, of a reportedly of an Ian. I don't know him. There are people involved with Middletown locations with the intelligence community. Also, they have been trying to take pictures of things to make fake exceptions. There are state police involved with a Gill family and families next to Central Connecticut State University, involved with people from other countries, like Adjuster Klavinskis and his brother, reported, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with predicate acts with a Joshua Stryker on and off campuses, on and off Trinity College with the FBI and with some military police forging and switching names, also with various natures of courts and roles with the state police forms and families intercities and interstates, criminally involved. The only time I ever saw a Mike Roberts at a Ray Close house was one time after they graduated. That was recorded, demonstrated, confessed, were confirmed. Roles with them trying to make fake exceptions, exception nature, where and how they have roles with predicate acts with kids, and where and how they use words like crimes involved with predicate acts, methods recorded, and where and how they say they don't see evidence. This is relevant to where and how they've been using criminally foreign influence readings of statutes as that which is hyper evidential, while simultaneously pretending they don't see evidence. They know there's evidence. They're preventing mandated law using social media too, including how they have wire crime acts and methods with the little boys and girls sickly distinctly, effectively to keep measured and maintained collusions with locations, areas, and states, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, in the interbranch, while they all simultaneously need to pretend other, also as roles with uses of that insidiousness of the logic of people A through Z, like with voting value and stuff like that, regarding other people's motivations when they speak. So there are the rules of the sciences that they don't go by, and why and how they're told to deny this for legitimate reasons, because we'll open up all kinds of dialogues with types of experts we have to rely on, but by a lot of people have to rely on, that they won't have the time to deal with those people. For example, relative also where they've been getting away with this and pretending not to realize, which is also hyper evidentially recorded. But to use what is hyper evidential as we're supposed to, as the Constitution unabridged, mandated law has to be followed. And the intelligence community has been discrediting good information. They have James Comey, as one of the ones involved with Congress, used where the other branches of governments being and having been used, grouped and together, criminally foreign influenced. They were shown needs to hide that, means and needs to, relevant to that extortion entertained. Blame, to that slavery method, entertained, claimed other things like extortion, while simultaneously in the furtherance of the slavery method. It's an identity theft, fraud, slander method, sickly distinctly against leaders, because they are individuals. Only an individual voice can defend the order of the finite. But they are now, being and having been above all locations, areas, and states, already forced any leader, no matter how powerful they get, to entertain criminally foreign influence, positive and negative treatments as collusions with people that aren't in things they don't even realize, all the locations, areas, states. So a whole bunch of people that I don't know at all the names of, know mine, and others I do know the names of. It was only to make it look like I know them. If me or anyone else brought their names up, because they're involved with the intelligence community all along where Two Rod Highway runs into Hanging Dog Lane, and vice versa, and and while hyper conversely, because this is relative where and how fact, true, nature-oriented predicate acts and timing where we are going to be is involved with this conscious exploitation of the human value/value progression system, as its science is plural, as its volume science is plural simultaneously, so we could discern simultaneous, hyper invisible, but still discernible. So this is this is the identity of relativity theorem, and this is the identity of hyperrelativity theorem. But it's also that the slash, the syllogism, it is relativity slash hyperrelativity. We can only be relativity. Where and how? We can only be the value of the slash simultaneously. But it too could be further positive or negative to itself. Nature wants and needs us to understand criminal insidiousness. Nature is a positive treatment. Tactically ulterior from how the identities of the law can afford discerned. Not one has learned boxings. The prisons and people involved with correction supposed to be correct people from not wanting to do crimes, what they call it. They left out their rules with predicate acts methods. They left out their rules with wire crimes, means to be able to speak about this that are being discerned, because there are people in the background pretending they don't see evidences. Because what's actually recorded shows a whole bunch of roles with a breaching method. People A through Z, where they attach that person to fake words, change words, fake ties to other people, fake natures of ties to other people. They have fabricated evidences roles with the Connecticut news media and the locations next to them playing these games, also with the people who answer the phones with them with wire crimes, forcing their little bunch of chicken heads running around with time treatments. All the food's coming out at the elderly homes. Same crime torture method at the prisons, with involved with the same names, involved with predicate acts on off the campuses, on off my street, leading up to the World Trade Center attack context. In that context and since, they should fear Mike Pence and they. Hear many pray. Get them on page in sequence. Don't speak about another murder or by police or by anyone else pretending passions and emotions. I'll show you how to use them. Right. Boxing is might. Make sure they get on paper. Please, don't pretend it's personal. You want to record, and don't pretend your passions and emotions, your motivations. Because I asked you a bunch of times nicely, and when the aggression, you had to lie about that by attaching me to fake uses of aggression and fake other natures of things you guys pretended with experts on me. Fake conversations with me show that. What's recorded is other than you guys are pretending consciously. So make sure they understand this, Americans, people of the world. There has not been journalism following science, and they know that. They blame other things, others, ourselves, the causes for it. It's between campuses, but it's kept the outcome /S for what I caught them using the parks and recs and the elderly's for homes for, and the medical campuses and the fire campuses simultaneously as the names evolve with their narratives and background. Get them on paper into branch to one name and sequence now. And the campuses, I want the response for the campuses, plural. I want Rocky Hill campuses. I want a response for the Hartford campuses. You guys didn't respond. You hid what I told you about that CCSU magnet school and the spots next to it, and the names involved like Scalora, with a whole bunch of natures of predicate acts. So there, as the names evolved, interbranch, intercampuses, and then on off the World Trade Center attack and the spots next to it, as people who stick roles with sticking sequence shifts and fake things in databases. Also with their professors. I'd fear God to hide and plot. I'll rap a lot. Don't ban me. Don't ban. Get them on paper. They have. You should see. It's only if you they have the So they have WFSB's Twitter page, also involved with the agencies influencing these online companies with their and their individuals individually grouped in together from off campuses, from off the businesses' locations, increasingly on off those locations, increasing collusions where they use things like race. And the only response is, like, in other words, they have race and sexual groups with the intelligence community that are offensively collusions with in other words, you have to complain about something. WFSB attached me to fake words. They attach little kids and their families to fake words with themselves and others. In other words, they force people not to be able to speak individually. And then they make fake exceptions too. And they hide the exception. They hide how that's recorded too, per relevance of the time treatments used to branch it too fast, too slow. They already recorded themselves pretending passions and emotions into records. Fear God for what's recorded. Now get them, because these are people with Sandy Hook recorded at crime scenes with their patients and criminals, then at their locations, and effectively their narratives pretending not to do it, to understand that, and their natures pretending not to understand that as actually recorded. That's hyper evidential. That's why you have to follow mandated law. Get them on paper now, real fast. Make sure